Members, there's no applause on the floor, members. Let's maintain decorum on the floor. Mr. Holden, you are recognized for your procedural motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's a committee report at the desk relative to the SB 548 de Leon by Alejo. I request unanimous consent that the committee report be deemed read and deemed adopted, and to suspend Assembly Rule 63 to allow Mr. Alejo to take up Senate Bill 548 in mock-up form without reference to file for purposes of third reading.
Is there any objection to this request? Seeing and hearing none, the committee report is deemed read and adopted, and the request is granted. Mr. Alejo, you may open. Pardon me. Clerk will read Senate Bill 548.
Senate Bill 548 by Senator De Leon, enacting to child care.
Mr. Alejo, you may open.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker and members. I'm presenting another bill by our Senate President Pro Tem, SB 548, which is called the Raising Child Care Quality Act. This bill establishes a baseline training program that will reach every family child care provider participating in California's state funding child care system. This bill recognizes that family child care providers do some of the most important work in our society, and we need to support them in that. Providers' low pay, which is sometimes less than $5 an hour, means that very few have spare income to finance ongoing education. But improving and requiring free basic training for every provider in every county is a great step forward to meeting the new federal requirements and doing the right thing for our children. This bill has requirements for subsidized child care providers that will include a 4-hour orientation for all new providers within months of beginning service and give current providers 2 years to fulfill this requirement. It establishes a new health and safety training program designed by experts and providers and delivered by family care providers themselves that will keep providers and children healthy. The Act also builds on existing child care training structures and gives preference to community organizations that currently deliver training to expand training to every part of the state. And finally, this bill requires a centralized record keeping and list that providers to ensure that all providers receive training and the providers may organize themselves. Only limited information will be shared. This is an important bill, colleagues, and respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Alejo. Seeing no discussion or debate on the item, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 44, noes 23. Measure passes. Mr. Holden, you are recognized for your procedural motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's a committee report at the desk relative to the SB 643 McGuire. I request unanimous consent that the committee report be deemed read and deemed adopted, and to suspend Assembly Rule 63 to allow Mr. Bonta to take up Senate Bill 643 in mock-up form without reference to file for purposes of third reading.
Is there any objection to this request? Seeing and hearing none, committee report is deemed read and deemed adopted, and the request is granted. The clerk will read
Senate Bill 643 by Senator McGuire, an act relating to medical marijuana.
Mr. Bonta, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Tonight I rise to present SB 643 by Senator McGuire. SB 643 is part of a package, members, of medical cannabis bills negotiated between the legislature and the governor that includes AB 243 by Assemblymember Wood and AB 266, which I am a joint author, along with Assemblymembers Cooley, Jones Sawyer, and Lackey. California was the first state in the nation to allow for the medicinal use of marijuana back in 1996 with the passage of Proposition 215 by the voters. However, since then, our state has fallen woefully behind with respect to regulating this quickly growing industry. For nearly 20 years, we have lived in a wild west of sorts with respect to the marijuana industry. This year, the legislature has come up with a solution in the form of ABs 266, 243, and this bill, SB 643. All three bills address different aspects of the medicinal marijuana industry, and all three must pass to enact the sweeping medical marijuana regulations that the legislature and stakeholders have worked so hard on during the course of this year. SB 643 helps provide patients safe access to medical cannabis. The bill looks at licensing specific areas of the industry, including cultivation and transportation, establishes an apprenticeship program for cannabis workers so that workers are well trained, authorizes the Medical Board of California to investigate physicians who are not complying with the law, and establishes other important critical portions of the comprehensive regulation of medical cannabis in California. Members, these bills, all of which are contingent upon each other, is the furthest our legislature has ever come to achieving a comprehensive regulatory framework for medical cannabis in the state. Our state desperately needs to be in compliance with federal guidelines and to protect our patients. Our state desperately needs the passage of these three bills. I respectfully ask for your aye vote on SB 643, members.
Mr. Jones Sawyer, you are recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I must commend Senator McGuire for helping to move comprehensive medical cannabis regulation. He has been a dedicated advocate for his constituents. This measure has been crafted to create a balance. Everyone is not happy, but we have tried to create a system that will allow many to legally participate in this industry. AB 266, along with AB 234 and SB 643, creates a regulatory system that respects the interests of the local government while still providing a consistent statewide structure. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Alejo, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, colleagues. I want to applaud the author on his joint effort with Senator Allen. But I know there was a little dispute going on between them over the joint bills. It reminded me of an episode of the Housewives of Orange County, but I'm glad that finally got resolved. Ask for an aye vote on this bill.
Mr. Cooley, you are recognized.
Colleagues, I just want to say this is a very important bill that we are bringing forward. And, you know, there's an expression to be a hero, you have to believe in the heroic. This is an issue which has repeatedly defied solution, devilishly complex. It is the world's biggest tangle of fishing line. And even to know where you start to unravel a problem of this magnitude defies easy resolution. And but the one thing you know is to lead, you can't operate with a question mark. You have to believe you can solve the problem. You have to jump out. My favorite quote on leadership is, the job of the leader is not to challenge people, it's to get them to challenge themselves. And you do this by not proceeding with a question mark. And building on the work of Tom Amiano, who served in this body, Luke Correa, who served in this body in the prior session, who put years into this effort, brought people to the table, thought through concepts, built a foundation of ideas. In this session, a group of us in the two houses rolled up our sleeves and tried to make progress. A vital part of that, actually, you know, is just seeing what is happening. In our own house, actually, a critical moment happened in this house when two bills moving through our policy committee structure proceeded in the appropriations committee in our house. And in that process, sitting down with the chair, discussing this idea that you've got two strong bills with the potential to move forward, but seeing some of the difficulties of conflict, we were urged, counseled, to find a way to put that together. That's what we did in the Assembly bill. It came to this floor as members, a 62-8 to vote, 62 to 8 vote on this floor, Senate to the Senate. We've seen continuing visionary work to kind of put this thing together. By July, we had a major bill in print before we went off the break so we could sit down with the governor's people and say, Tell us how you want to structure it. It's your administration. And the upshot is acting decisively to grapple with an insoluble problem, keeping lines of communication open, listening to our colleagues who felt they could help us kick some of the obstacles out of the way. We are now at a point where tonight we have a series of bills coming before us which will occupy the field in medical marijuana. It will prevent drafters of ballot measures next year from writing lax rules in this vital area. So it's extraordinarily timely. It is a product of great collaborative labor of the two houses. Mr. McGuire's bill has important elements of setting up the administrative structure, suitability, a whole array of rules. This is a great bill. I urge your aye vote.
Mr. Cooper, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A question for the author.
Without objection.
On the standard, is it 200 yards away from a school or 600-foot radius from a school?
I'm not sure about that, Mr. Cooper. I got to get back to you.
Okay, well, on my own time, the bottom line, this place is going to sell marijuana. Medicinal, whatever it is, it's going to sell marijuana, and it should be nowhere near a school. And like I said, my issue is it's got nowhere near being, it should be in an industrial area where a lot of these places should be zoned. But that's a big issue. It should be nowhere near a school. And 200 yards away or 600 feet is still not enough away from our kids, and just the influence of not having that and seeing folks come and buy it.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. I have refreshed my recollection on this issue. It's 600 feet radius from schools, so hopefully that'll be appropriate for you. And locals can also create their own licenses, and if they want to make it bigger, then they can go above the floor set by the state.
In that case, my colleagues, think about it. It's going to be located 600 feet within a school site. That's pretty darn close. And knowing that, I'm going to have to stand against this bill.
Dr. Wood, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to speak in support of this bill, and I actually would like to, if possible, maybe address the concerns of my colleague from Elk Grove. I come from a city where we actually have medical marijuana ordinances, and we're very concerned about how the proximity to children. This bill does not restrict anything that locals want to do to make a stricter law. It simply places a floor. You can be as strict as you want. You can do whatever you want to protect people in your neighborhoods. And I think that's absolutely critical. This is a very complicated subject to work on. There will be things that we need to work on through this process. And as you read the bill, you will see that a lot of the implementation isn't going to happen until 2018. But we've got to make progress this year. It's absolutely critical that we have a foundational structure around medical marijuana, something we have grossly neglected for the last 20 years. So I know that there are mechanisms to deal with the concerns that my colleague from Elk Grove has. We've done it locally. I know you can do it locally. You can be much more strict than this creates. And I know that's a real easy solution to solve. So I urge your support on this measure. It is a package of 3 bills. It is a big step forward for the state of California, and I think we owe it to people after 19 years to get this thing right. Thank you.
All debate having ceased on the measure, Mr. Bonta, you may close.
Thank you for the discussion, members, and I appreciate the concerns raised by my colleague from Elk Grove. This has been a bill that's been part of a comprehensive set of regulations that have been hammered out this year by stakeholders from throughout the state of California and throughout the industry. We have counties in support. We have cities in support. We have police chiefs in support. We have PORAC in support. We have UFCW in support. We have Teamsters in support. We have industry in support. Because of this deep engagement process through the stakeholder meetings that we've had, through literally thousands of hours of staff and representatives from the key stakeholders, we've come to where we are today. We're on the verge of doing something for the first time in 20 years, changing a environment that is more akin to the Wild West and creating a reasonable set of comprehensive regulations on an industry that needs them direly. I respectfully ask for your aye vote, members.
Thank you, Mr. Bonta. With that, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll. Tally the vote. Ayes 54, noes 11. Measure passes. Members, I am prepared to lift the call. I'm prepared to lift the call on Mr. Bonta's AB 533. The clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 All members vote or desire to vote. All members vote or desire to vote. All members vote or desire to vote. All members vote who 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 desire to vote. Mr. Bonta. Ms. Gonzalez moves a call. Mr. Holden, you are recognized for your motion. Mr. Holden, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's a committee report at the desk relative to the SB 168 gains. I request unanimous consent that the committee report be deemed read and deemed adopted, and to suspend Assembly Rule 63 to allow Mr. Gatto to take up Senate Bill 168 in mock form without reference to file for purposes of third reading.
Is there any objection to this request? Seeing and hearing no objection, the committee report is deemed read and deemed adopted, and the request is granted, and the clerk will read.
Senate Bill 168 by Senator Gaines and others, an act relating to unmanned aircraft systems, declaring the urgency thereof to take effect immediately.
Members. Mr. Gatto, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I think the image is seared in most people's minds of the people down in the Cajon Pass having to flee their cars on the freeway because a wildfire had jumped the freeway and was heading towards occupied vehicles. The reason, of course, why the wildfire jumped the freeway was because firefighting efforts had to cease because drones were spotted in the area. Folks, when hobbyists fly a drone near a firefighting effort, they not only endanger the lives of the firefighters, they endanger the lives of all the people on the ground as well. When they fly a drone near a firefighting area, the firefighter in charge has to issue a complete aerial stop, meaning that all firefighting efforts, whether by helicopter or by airplane, have to cease. Senate Bill 168 by Senator Ted Gaines and I seeks to remedy that. It would allow first responders the authority, which they do not have now, to take out a drone that is spotted near a wildfire. It would also create penalties akin to parking in front of a fire hydrant or parking in a red zone for the drone age. It would mandate that people who fly a drone near a wildfire would be subject to substantial penalties and up to a year in jail. As we speak, a fire is raging out of control in Amador and Calaveras counties. Through both the increased fines and the creation of civil immunity, SB 168 will help keep rogue drones from interfering in those emergency situations and from preventing the most effective response in a time-sensitive crisis. This bill has received no votes and has no opposition and has even been supported by the drone industry. I ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Gatto. Mr. Obernolte, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, I rise as co-author of SB 168 and ask for your support. The fire referenced by my colleague from Glendale was in my district, the North Fire, and I'd like to elaborate on the circumstances surrounding that fire. Aerial firefighting activity was halted in that fire, not because of just one or two drones, but 5 drones were in the air. And there was no choice except to ground the firefighting aircraft because we can't put our first responders' lives at risk. But that's just an unacceptable consequence of drone activity. And colleagues, that was the second time in a week that firefighting activity had to be halted in a fire in my district. The previous week from that, there was a fire in Big Bear Lake where firefighting activity had to be halted because of drones. So although we never want to fine people unnecessarily, we prefer to educate them, but there needs to be some teeth in the regulation. There needs to be some reason for people to educate themselves as to where not to fly their drones, and I think this is a great start. I urge your aye vote and your support.
Thank you, Mr. Obernolte. Ms. Gaines, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This bill comes in the wake of a drought-heightened fire season. Over the course of this blazing summer, many accounts of private unauthorized drones interfering with the emergency services made national headlines. On multiple occasions, the simple presence of these drones forced firefighters to ground mission-critical tanker aircraft, unnecessarily putting pilots, firefighters, civilians, and property at risk. Additionally, a drone recently almost collided with an air ambulance transporting a patient to the hospital, putting everyone in the helicopter at risk. This bill is critical to ensuring that emergencies can effectively do their part to save lives without having to interfere with unauthorized drones. I strongly recommend a support on this bill.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gaines. Seeing no additional comment, Mr. Gatto, you may close if you wish.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Assuming this bill passes, I would just ask for immediate transmittal to the Senate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Gatto. With that, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 67, no 0 on the urgency. Ayes 67, no 0 on the bill, with immediate transmittal to the Senate. Mr. Holden, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 63 to allow the following bills to be taken up today without reference to file for purposes of concurring in Senate amendments. The bills are AB 199, Eggman, AB 573, Medina, AB 604, Olson, AB 679, Allen, AB 684, Alejo, AB 802, Williams by Rendon, AB 1513, Williams by Stone, AB 243, Wood, AB 266, Bonta.
Without objection. We will move first to AB 199. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 199 by Assemblymember Eggman, enacting into alternative energy, declaring the urgency thereof to take effect immediately.
Ms. Eggman, pardon me, Dr. Eggman, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, AB 199 is back from the Senate for concurrence. This bill is so good it needs no discussion. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Dr. Eggman. Seeing no discussion or debate on the item, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll. Tally the vote. Ayes 65, no 0. Senate amendments are concurred in. Moving to AB 573, without reference to file, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 573 by Assemblymember Medina, enacting relating to higher education, making appropriation therefore, declaring the urgency thereof to take effect immediately.
Mr. Medina, you may open.
Mr. Speaker and members, AB 573 is back for concurrence. This bill provides relief to students harmed by Corinthian colleges, which abruptly shut its doors and filed bankruptcy earlier this year. The Senate amendments narrowed the scope of the bill to following two primary provisions. First, the bill restores Cal Grant award eligibility for up to 2 years to an estimated 3,400 held students that will benefit from this reinstatement. Second, the bill provides grants to community service organizations to help Corinthian students with federal loan forgiveness. California students stand to receive $300 million in federal loan forgiveness if they can successfully complete the process. The bill has received broad bipartisan support. Recent amendments have removed all opposition. I ask for your concurrence in Senate amendments.
Thank you, Mr. Medina. Seeing no discussion on the item, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 64, no 0. Senate amendments are concurred in. AB 604, without reference to file, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 604 by Assemblymember Olson, enacting relating to vehicles.
Ms. Olson, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. AB 604 is back on concurrence again with amendments from the governor's office. Appreciate my joint author in Assemblyman Mark Stone and urge an aye vote.
Thank you, Ms. Olson. Mr. Stone, you are recognized.